Jacqueline, I mean, again, I will just describe it because a lot of people listen to us on the radio as opposed to watching on telly. They are horrendous scenes. Nobody really of clear thought would want to be deliberately on water when it is those kind of conditions. This is a mess. It's not going to stop. The Rwanda plan, I mean, if that's going to get across the line or not, I mean, no one cares. We're just hearing already that thousands of people already this year are making those crossings. I mean, does this government really have any solutions, Jacqueline?
Well, we've tried to have solutions for the last, probably, I'd say, seriously, the last 3 or 4 years. And the big problem in all of this, I'm not remotely surprised. I mean, I think there were 300 today. And this is obviously, and then we've got these fatalities as well, which is absolutely horrendous. But what you've got to remember is, these people smugglers, frankly, they make millions on the back of misery. And they have done that all along. And also, in my view, we've never, ever had enough of a deterrent for when people actually start this journey. And this is one of the reasons why we've had to try to bring in Rwanda, actually taking people somewhere else. And unfortunately, when we went right through the illegal immigration bill, and we're still on the Rwanda bill, and it's in the House of Lords as well, and I am surrounded by people, and I'll be quite blunt, we have bleeding hearts who think, I don't know, sometimes that the world is made up of marshmallows. It isn't. It's made up of ruthless crooks and gangsters, and the people who are the victims in all of this are these migrants. And as we've said, they're generally young men between 18 and 34. They're not fleeing persecution generally. It's generally for an economic reason. And that makes it even worse, frankly.
Michael, do you make it on?
Well, I mean, Jacqueline's last comment just simply isn't true. The government's own asylum system, and as we know, this is not a government that is particularly favourable towards migrants, but the government's own system states that 4/5 of people who apply for asylum and have their cases heard are given asylum. So that's the government's own system saying that these are genuine asylum seekers that need to be given safety and security and refuge. And it's that other 20% that are not. Though, as we know, the government fails to return that 20%. But obviously the context today is people are making journeys. People are dying. We've been 3 today and there have been many, many more. And it's a tragedy every time. And, of course, we don't know those people's life stories. We don't know their family members. But we do know that it's tragedy. We know how we would feel were it a family member of ours. The government isn't doing anything constructive to stop the crossings, which it should do by closer engagement with France and by establishing safe and legal routes, which it consistently fails to do. So on the one hand, you have a government saying we want to stop the boats. On the other hand, they don't do anything constructive about it. The Rwanda policy, even if it goes through, won't do anything to stop the boats, which I think everybody with any degree of understanding of the sector fully understands. It's a complete sideshow.
The bottom line here is these aren't people that are fleeing from war zones.
Well, we've already established that 4/5 of them are. They
are leaving France. France is not a war zone. They can claim asylum in France.
Your own Home Office determines that 4/5 of them are genuine asylum seekers.
I'm not talking about what the Home Office... I am saying that people are quite allowed to claim asylum in France. These people are risking their lives, and they are predominantly economic migrants. They are predominantly men. We have actually managed to have a reasonably good deal with 1 or 2 of the countries, with Albania, for example, because you can come to Albania with your passport to the UK. This isn't straightforward, but there isn't, as I've said all along. You have to have proper deterrents in place to stop people trying to get here in the first place.
Yeah, but hold on, though, because the point that Mike is making...
I don't disagree with some of the points Mike makes.
The point he's making is a valid one, right? Because at the end of the day, I mean, I think it's absolutely ludicrous that you can say that I'm an asylum seeker, I'm terrified for my life, but actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all these different random safe countries and I'm going to cherry pick, because I don't think there's anything wrong with being an economic migrant, but I personally think that that's what most of these people are. However, notwithstanding that, Mike's point is a valid one. The system as it currently stands has a huge acceptance rate of these people, so the system as it currently stands disregards what you're saying, disregards what I'm saying, and confirms that they are asylum seekers. So why hasn't that system been changed? Because everyone can see that it's ludicrous.
Because you've got one of the key difficulties as well. Most of these people that come across on the boats get rid of their paperwork. You're then in a situation, and it's quite difficult actually for the immigration officers to determine what their nationality is and where they've actually come from. Now, you can only return somebody to their home country if you know where their home country is. So that's, again, been complicated, the entire matter, because this is what they tend to do as well.
So quickly tell me, Mike, from the Labour side of the fence, how would they speed up the processing of someone who has deliberately discarded their identification documents?
Well, I will just answer Jacqueline, if you don't mind. I mean, the Home Office is when I've worked with them on this, they have a very robust set of procedures, and they can work out where people come from, of course. I mean, for example, by what language they speak, even if they don't have documents. And it isn't a system that is set up...
Citizen.
It isn't a system that is set up to let people in who aren't genuine asylum seekers at all. But, of course, the system that we have has to comply with international law, and there is an international definition of asylum seeker, which the government cannot, thankfully, go too far beyond. But to answer your question, I don't think Labour set out exactly what its asylum policy would be, but it would be a humane policy. The first and foremost, the most important thing they would do...
Out because it's getting a little bit tiring, actually, everyone lecturing the government about what a poor job they're doing. And by the way, I agree. I think they are doing a poor job. I think it's an absolute shambles. I think it's embarrassing. And I think that people must be sitting there having a right old laugh in whatever countries they're on, watching their TikTok being lured over into 4-star hotels because our asylum system is an absolute joke. But I think it's very rich of people from the Labour side to constantly criticise the backlogs and all the rest of it, whilst not being able to clearly articulate if someone has deliberately discarded their identification documents, which, by the way, if you genuinely want asylum, why would you do that? Massive fat question mark. But anyway, if they don't answer that question as to what they would do, how do we take them seriously?
I mean, it's not inconceivable that somebody would lose their documents in the midst of making a thousands of miles long journey or going on a boat from Calais to Dover.
I've seen footage of them deliberately discarding their stuff, whether it's their mobile phone.
I'm not suggesting it never happens, but it is also legitimate to think that some people might lose them. But in terms of what Labour would do, first and foremost, they would process asylum claims.
How?
We've got tens of... by employing some staff in the Home Office. We used to do it. You know, it takes Germany a month, it takes us 2 years, and the government has now refused to process tens of thousands of claims. What that does is harm the asylum seekers. It doesn't deter anybody from coming, but it harms the asylum seekers because they're waiting for their lives to get back together. And it costs us, as the public and as the government, millions of pounds. We're paying $8 million a day to house these people. We've processed their claims, they then give them refugee status, they then go and get on with their lives, and then they pay their own bills.
Well,
I generally don't understand why the government doesn't want to do that, because it's a huge waste of public money, and I don't understand why other people don't want to do it as well. It seems ludicrous to me.
What do you think to it all? Get in touch. You know how by now, gbviews@gbnews.com. We just go around these same circles all the time. Do you actually think that anybody of whatever political colour is genuinely serious about stopping people illegally illegally entering the country to try and claim asylum in routes that actually, quite frankly, those routes should be closed? Why are we all these years on still sitting there watching these boat crossings? The mind absolutely boggles.